Hey guys, it's the Melblade 5, and E3 2018 has come and gone. It honestly felt like it went too fast, which is a bummer, but there were a lot of announcements and appearances that gave me numerous impressions. Plus, I did this last year anyway, so it might as well be a tradition at this point. While I don't think there were as many games this year that relate to me or really excited me, not that I'm saying this year sucked, I still have a lot of things to say. The only significant difference with this video compared to last year's is that I'll instead be covering the games in chronological order of when I saw their announcements or learned that they were at E3, just so there's a more natural flow this time around. Nothing else to say, let's just get into it. While I don't have an Xbox One, as it has barely any exclusive games I'm interested in, although Halo Infinite is a thing, Microsoft's conference did announce games that are also releasing on consoles I do own, the first of which being Devil May Cry 5. At first I thought it was a fan-made trailer, but then I saw E3 in the title and I knew it was real. After Mega Man 11, we're getting all the Capcom sequels I thought were pipe dreams. So, Nero is back, which really surprised me as I thought most people didn't like him, although I didn't mind him, and now he has a badass robotic arm that makes his playstyle appear much faster and action-packed than it was in 4, which is really my only gripe with Nero's gameplay, albeit a minor one. Plus, just based on the trailer, the game has the same level of awesome and ridiculous combat and action present in the rest of the series, which I can say now that I do own all of the original series games. So I'm incredibly excited for when it comes out next year. I just want to see more! My only question when seeing the trailer was, where's my man Dante at? And then he appeared at the very end, looking even older now. Plus, it appears that Ruben Langdon is voicing him again, which makes me very happy, because he's the Dante, what David Hayter is the Snake. And if Dante wasn't enough to get me more excited, it looks like Virgil might be here as well. And if that's the case, then my hype will be at 12. Next, I immediately learned of the existence of another Shonen Jump crossover fighting game, Jump Force, which sounds like the name of a really dumb superhero team. My experience with Shonen Jump franchises is still very limited, so the only reason I'm bringing this up is to make this one statement. If Yugi and Izuku are playable, then I'll consider it. Also, Light Yagami, what the hell? Lastly, for Microsoft, even though I only learned about this via a Game Explain video, is Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition. I'll be honest, I've never played a Tales of game, but it is a series that I've been somewhat interested in trying out for myself due to word of mouth. The only thing that was stopping me was that most of the games were released on consoles I don't own, and they're mostly going under my radar. But with this version of Vesperia, it being at E3 made me aware of its existence. And Vesperia, along with Symphonia, are the two I hear the most about, and the ones I see get the most positive reception. I've seen Masayanella play a little bit of Vesperia, and by a little I mean only the first minute of gameplay, so I have basically no idea what I'm getting myself into. However, I know from past experiences that when I try out a game in the same situation, especially JRPGs, I end up loving them. So I'm hoping the same process will occur with Tales of. At least I understand the bare basics of the gameplay. I didn't think I would be that excited when hearing about this game, but now that I've thought about it more, I'm really looking forward to it. I also heard that this version will include features that were previously exclusive to the Japanese version of the original, so that should be interesting from a newcomer's perspective. With Ubisoft's conference, there were really only two games I had anything to say about. First being Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which I was initially unaware of. I like Assassin's Creed, but I will admit that Ubisoft oversaturates the series by releasing a new one every single year. They revealed Origins last year, where I talked about that, and now Odyssey is coming out at about exactly 1 year since Origins was released. Regardless, Odyssey is following the same formula that was introduced in Origins, which I do like, as out of all the Assassin's Creed games I own, Origins is the one I put the most time into. They also focused on ship combat, which was in Origins briefly, but follows closely to how it was first established in Black Flag. Although I am interested in seeing what new unlockable abilities there are, and what exactly the plot will be given the ancient Greece setting, because the trailer didn't really show us that much in those departments. But if you have the ability to throw your helmet and possess things with it, 10 out of 10! The other thing was the Donkey Kong DLC for Mario plus Rabbids. However, I haven't really been keeping up with this DLC, in which I honestly thought it had already been released. I really enjoyed Mario plus Rabbids gameplay, so I'm hoping that this DLC will provide the same amount of fun I've had previously with the game. And while I haven't seen that much gameplay of it, it does seem to hold true, but with the characters having additional skills. With Sony, or at least out of everything I knew was at their conference, the only thing they showed that interests me is Spider-Man. I know people are probably sick of me talking about this game, seeing as how I've talked about it 3 years in a row now, but fortunately this will be the last time as it comes out in September. From what I saw of the gameplay demo, the open world roaming looks very similar to what I've seen of other Spider-Man games, like Spider-Man 2, minus the pizza theme, but with combat being a more acrobatic version of Batman Arkham, and that's pretty much what I expected from what I saw last year. What I mainly wanted to talk about was the showcase, as that showed me the one thing that I really wanted to see from this game. The villains. Every previous time I've talked about this game, I bring up how I'm interested in learning what villains will appear in a similar vein to the Arkham games. Especially because we only knew about 3 villains in this game prior. But they really delivered on that part, as we got Electro, Rhino, Scorpion, and Vulture, who all appear to be working with Mr. Negative, which makes me wonder if they're intentionally trying to do a Sinister Six sort of thing. And if that's the case, it'll just make the game even more exciting. Plus, I really like what they did with the designs of the villains here, as they are based on their original designs from the comics, but are adapted to look cooler and more threatening rather than cartoony, thanks to the power of metal suits instead of using spandex. Then at the end of the scene, Spider-Man is backed into a corner by the villains and suddenly an unknown figure appears. And then it ends. If I had to guess who this is, I would say either Green Goblin due to the shock factor it would bring, and the light could be coming from his glider, or Dr. Octopus when following the Sinister Six thing. But we'll just have to see later. As Nintendo has the majority of the games I'm interested in, and due to time zone differences, their presentation was the only one I watched in full. So just like last year, they take up the majority of this video. Before anything else happens, they showed off a trailer for a giant robot game called Daemon X Machina. Unfortunately, they didn't actually talk about this game, so all I can go off of is the trailer, but I'm actually quite interested in this. I think it looks like a lot of fun, and the game's style and combat reminds me a lot of Gundam, which should hopefully mean that there's a lot of great action in store. I just would have liked some more information! Then they revealed some DLC for Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Torna, the Golden Country, that acts as a prequel where you play as Adam during the Aegis War. First off, thank God I managed to get far enough in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 so that none of the trailer's content spoils anything for me. Second, is that while I generally wait to finish the main campaign of a game before playing any DLC campaigns, and this isn't going to be an exception, I'll find it interesting to gain a greater idea of what happens during the Aegis War, including the battle against Malos and Jin's bond with Laura, which was only occasionally presented via flashbacks in the main game. Not that I think they've withheld any plot points from the game for this, just for a little extra knowledge. I also learned that they added a challenge mode to the main game as DLC, which also includes Shulk and Fiora as blades. I don't know how that works, but it will be really weird and surreal for me to see them interacting with the party from 2. Hopefully this won't have to be the only time, though. Then Reggie himself talks about Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. Admittedly, I have felt conflicted about these games since they were announced. On one hand, based on the trailer, it doesn't appear to be as bad, for lack of a better term, as what I thought based on the rumors. But on the other, some of the gripes I've felt since hearing of those rumors are still present. Mainly how much they've integrated Pokemon Go into this. I played Go for like a month, with my phone constantly crashing and me only catching one decent Pokemon. And then I dropped it like many others. Not only does this mean that a large part of the game's appeal doesn't relate to me, but they've included the Go catching mechanics, which I do not like. If they took out the ability for you to miss when throwing a Pokeball, that's great, but if not, I won't like it. Cause I had tons of moments in Go where I swiped the same as when I caught something, and it misses anyway. There's also the fact that we're going back to Kanto, and nothing against Kanto or the original Pokemon, but it feels a bit repetitive and uninspired to me, honestly. However, the battle system is exactly the same as in the main games, and these are supposed to be mainline games, so it places me in a tough spot. But admittedly, Pokemon hasn't brought back many good memories for me lately due to the trauma from being abused by some toxic members of the fandom, which did play a factor in me skipping Ultra Sun and Moon. If I do get them, I'll be going with Eevee, since I like Eevee more than Pikachu, even though you can't evolve it for some reason. But they didn't give us any new information about this game during the presentation, other than you can get Mew. Next up was Super Mario Party, and this game caught me off guard for one reason. While the trailer made me think this is going to be something akin to Star Rush or Island Tour, both of which I skipped, But when I saw more gameplay of it, I realized that it's actually going back to the classic Mario Party formula, just with new mechanics layered on top, which definitely makes me want to give this game a chance. As someone who actually liked the car in 9 and 10, I equally enjoyed the classic style, and felt it was the smarter move to go back to it. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see too much of this game, but from what I did see, I also think that a lot of the mini-games look really fun this time around. Personally, I didn't like the board as it was too small for my liking and felt kind of lame in its design, but as this is Mario Party, there will be other boards which could be much better. While I question the inclusion of a Goomba as a playable character, this is the first case in a long time where I'm interested in a Mario Party game. But the intrigue did not compare to how I felt about the next Nintendo game, Fire Emblem Three Houses. Finally, we get to hear about the Switch game, and even though the trailer only gave us a small glimpse of what to expect from the story and gameplay, I cannot wait, because it's Fire Emblem. This may ultimately be a cosmetic thing, but I really like how they included generic soldiers fighting alongside the units, since it reflects this being a war rather than having like 12 people versus the world. There is some factor of gameplay involving these NPCs, and I'm interested in seeing how this affects the strategy of the game. Plus, it seems like there's a hub world similar to My Castle from Fates, where you can interact with the characters, which I'm guessing will be where between battle support conversations occur, if they bring that back. And I'm hoping this will help flesh out the characters' personalities further, because I really don't want this game to have uninteresting characters. Not that I've had this happen with Fire Emblem before, but I don't want that to ever start, especially not now. The only thing holding me back on talking more about this game is how limited the time we got to see it was. We only got the trailer during the presentation, and as far as I'm aware, it wasn't covered on Treehouse Live. Let me be greedy, cause I just want to see more. Now for the moment we've all been waiting for. Super Smash Brothers Ultimate. Cutting to the chase, Ultimate will feature every single character that has ever been playable in a Smash Bros. Game, including Snake! Which makes me so happy as I sorely miss him in Wii U and 3DS. With newcomers, albeit few, on top of that. That is the most insane thing I have ever heard in a video game. It almost feels unreal how they were able to pull this off. But the results in terms of the roster work perfectly. Most characters also appear to have some change made to them, however minor it may be, which makes me further shocked as to how this game exists in the quality that it is. On top of that, the core gameplay has been tweaked to make it more like Melee, which I'm sure will please most of those hardcore competitive Smash Bros. Players. Even the final smashes have been altered so that we no longer have transformation final smashes, and instead they're all instantaneous. But admittedly, I'm not a big fan of that change, only because it makes a lot of the final smashes feel very samey. Like, Pikachu and Sonic basically have the same final smash, and the same applies to Donkey Kong and Little Mac. I understand their reasoning of wanting to get right back to the action, but I think that they could have made some additional changes to prevent characters from feeling like they have identical final smashes when they're not clones. But there are other changes to characters that I like a lot, like Ganondorf finally using that damn sword, and I love all the details they gave to the presentation, such as the dramatic slow-mo for powerful attacks, and the character cut-ins when they use their final smash. However, admittedly, as we were going into the latter half of the section on Smash Bros., I did feel this wave of disappointment coming over me, but it didn't last long. This was because I felt like I had set my expectations too high, seeing as this is kind of a port, in that it reuses a lot of previous content. I had the impression that the only newcomers were the Inklings and Daisy as a clone, which threw me off guard, and there was also the little things like Waluigi's still in the Sis Trophy, Lin's still in the Sis Trophy, Takamaru's still in the Sis Trophy, but I was getting ahead of myself because I wasn't anticipating the big reveal. Oh yes! Oh, that isn't as cool as before. This does look kind of like Metroid. Samus is at the front as well, and I'm probably just getting ahead of myself though. Oh! Yes! Finally! Show that tagline! Show us that tagline! Now! Oh. Oh. yes! Ridley hits the big time! Ridley is playable! Finally! I have wanted this for years! I mentioned in the past that if I made the top 10 characters for Wii U and 3DS, Mega Man would have been number 1. Well, Ridley would have been number 2. That just shows how much I wanted him. When they were showing off the stages and they revealed that all the Wii U and 3DS stages were returning, I was confident that Pyrosphere would be amongst them, which made my hopes for Ridley sink lower than they already were. So the fact that he's playable made me even more ecstatic. Pretty much the beginning of this channel has been me wanting Ridley, and now everything has come full circle. I don't know what to do now since I didn't think we'd get this far. Shit! Just like when Mega Man was first revealed, I honestly thought that I was dreaming. I still do, actually! It's just too good to be true for me. Anyway, my thoughts on Ridley as a fighter is that his moveset looks so brutal and powerful, and his design is sick. I can't wait to play him when the game comes out. In all honesty though, one thing I do want to express now, just because, is that I think that Nintendo's presentation was nowhere near as good as last year's. Fire Emblem and Ridley aside. Simply because, for most of the games, we either knew they were going to appear, or was a safe guess, meaning that there weren't really any surprises, at least not to the same extent as Metroid Prime 4. Fortnite could have been one if it wasn't data mined beforehand. Plus, there were some games notably absent, and while we knew Smash Bros. Was going to be the main focus, I felt it could have easily been cut down by saving things like the character changes for a possible Smash Direct, or for players to discover when the game comes out. But that's all I wanted to say. All that's left is for me to cover the games that I didn't see as part of a particular conference. So almost immediately after Nintendo's presentation, one other game I learned was at E3 was My Hero 1's Justice. Because apparently they're not allowed to use the word academia. The trailer itself effectively just shows off gameplay for the recently revealed characters, with All For One at the very end, which doesn't surprise me, regardless of if he's playable or just a final boss character. But he should be really tough now that I've seen him fight in the anime. What I also wanted to talk about was the better looking gameplay we got, because I'm unsure on how to feel about this. My prior concern about the gameplay being on the slow side still holds true, at least when it comes to the characters' walking speeds, and the roster is kind of small with a total of 21 characters, but I think that the actual combat itself looks like a lot of fun, and I think they've made the best character choices for those 21 slots so far. I don't want this game to suck because I love the anime, but that's what a lot of people seem to think right now. Also, from watching Season 3, I really want Twice to be playable, as he's my favorite Vanguard member. Just hopefully he doesn't become the anime equivalent of Waluigi. So, Bloodstained. My previous impressions haven't really changed, barely got to see any gameplay of it myself. People are probably sick of me talking about this. I think that Curse of the Moon game looks really fun and I plan to play it. That's all. And finally, the last game in E3 that interested me and have things to say about, with going full circle back to Capcom, Mega Man 11. There wasn't a new trailer, but rather a gameplay demo of Blockman's stage, in which I can basically repeat my impressions of the gameplay trailer. I'm a big fan of the new double gear mechanic they've introduced, as it adds more depth to the gameplay, but is still optional so that you don't have to use it if you want more of a challenge, with Mega Man making his charge shot and weapons stronger, and the ability to slow down time being pretty handy to have during those more difficult sections. I also really like how they gave the same idea to the Robot Masters to make their boss fights more fleshed out. Blockman turns to a giant golem, and Fuse Man goes to lightning fast speeds. Additionally, I'm a big fan of the Robot Masters having longer stages this time around, but with more checkpoints present so that the game has a bit more content present compared to previous Mega Man games which are really short. I don't have much else to say because, in the end, it's still Mega Man, just with the gameplay expanded on. And I hope that what we've seen with Blockman and Fuse Man carries over to the remaining Robot Masters, who appear to be called Acid Man, Blast Man, Bounce Man, Torch Man, Impact Man, and Tundra Man. So that was pretty much everything for me at E3 this year. Of course, all these impressions come from someone who wasn't able to go and play the games themselves, and thus had to decipher impressions from the trailers and gameplay videos. But most of these games come out this year, so I won't have to wait too long.